All right, and for more, we turn now to Susan Crabtree, political correspondent for Real Clear Politics, and Geoff, editor-in-chief of Ballotpedia. Welcome to you both. He is with the election integrity measures passed in 8 states, that is, where they appeared on the ballot. A majority of voters in Idaho, Oklahoma, Iowa, Wisconsin, Missouri, Kentucky, North and South Carolina passed amendments making it illegal for non-citizens to vote in state and local elections. And on school choice, we have been watching several ballot measures. Voters in Kentucky rejected a measure which would have allowed the General Assembly to provide public funds for K through 12 education to non-public schools. Voters in Colorado are currently poised to reject a measure creating a right to school choice for K through 12 students and parents, and that decision has not yet been called. Nebraska has voted to repeal a law providing $10 million annually in state funds for students to attend private schools. A massive number of voters turned out for this election. As we mentioned earlier, according to a Washington Post exit polling, Donald Trump won the Catholic vote by a 15-point margin with 56% to 41%. And Reuters reports that independents accounted for a larger share of voters than Democrats and tied with Republicans. All right. And good to be back with you both this morning, Susan and Geoff. Susan, I'm going to start with you. I want to get your take on last night, especially the voter turnout. What did you think of the ground game for both campaigns?
Well, certainly in Pennsylvania, it was everybody was all in, especially with Kamala Harris having 4 events the last day. And we heard this talk about how she was knocking on 2,000 doors a minute in Pennsylvania. Well, it didn't seem to produce the outcome she hoped for. And with Trump prevailing there, it's setting up a very good Senate race too. Very tight right now with Dave McCormick, hedge fund CEO, really very close with a popular legacy governor, Senator, Bob Casey, who was the son of a legendary Senate governor with the same name. So it seemed like that in that particular state, and in Wisconsin, they didn't have the outcome, and the hype didn't produce the results, and Trump really prevailed. And there was a lot of voter registration that was done both in Pennsylvania and in many states across the country that were favorable to Republicans. In fact, in Pennsylvania, they were able to increase the Republican voter registration by about 300,000 in that state with a lot of effort. So I think the Trump campaign should be very pleased with their get out the vote effort this cycle, much more improved than 2020 when it was very experimental with the mail-in voting rules, and also this shift in messaging from Trump himself on down to every candidate to the local level about early voting, the importance of early voting.
Yeah, Geoff, I want to go to you now. As we heard, there were some major ballot initiatives on abortion last night. What did you make of the pro-life victories in 3 states and the pro-abortion wins in 4 others?
Yeah, well, good morning, Tracy. I think the Nebraska one is probably the most interesting one to me. You see pretty much across the board over the last few election cycles that when the right to an abortion ballot measures are on the ballot, they typically win it, and pretty comfortably, as you were covering earlier. 62% in Arizona, 52% in Missouri, 57% in Montana. And these are states that are voting Republican for the president, but they're also passing these abortion ballot measures. What you saw in Nebraska is a pretty unique situation. This is the first time we've seen this competing ballot measure. And what it kind of makes me wonder is, if you hadn't had 434 on the ballot, what would have happened with 439? Because really, if you think about Nebraska being quite similar to the states I just mentioned, you could kind of make the case, and I imagine that this is what we might see in future cycles, that having that competing ballot measure caused a certain percentage of the electorate to say, well, I would have voted for the right to abortion measure if it was here by itself, but I'd rather vote for this one. So I'm going to kind of split my vote a little bit. So it's really interesting to see how that one played out, because again, that's the first time we've seen something like that.
Susan, I want to go back to you, staying on the state level here. You're out in California. Tell us what happened there with the state house races, and also with Proposition 36, that tough on crime measure.
Yes, I think what you're seeing is a realignment in California. It started in San Francisco when they got rid of their DA, their very liberal DA, and last night George Gascon, the Los Angeles liberal DA that authored a very soft on crime measure in 2014, he went down in flames as well. This Proposition 36, Gavin Newsom tried to poison pill it throughout the summer, and he finally gave up because even the Democrats, the people in his own party, were siding with the Republicans, and the big box stores were funding it, Walmart and Target and others. It was a resounding victory for the tough on crime measure. It was 70% in California said no, we are not accepting these smash and grabs in across the state anymore. We're not going to accept this crime wave, this property crime wave, and also, the fact that we can't even go to the drugstore without having to ask somebody to get, lotion out of the locked case. So it's just it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people realize it, but there's 7 million Republican voters in California. We are far outvoted in the state that the Republicans are, and it's interesting to me that California, even in 2020, more Republicans voted for Donald Trump than in Texas, and people don't realize that. When it comes to the House races, I do think there still will be very, very close. The Senate, Steve Garvey, it really didn't even run a great campaign. He didn't have very many press conferences. He wasn't doing many events. So his election was about, Adam Schiff won that race 57% to 40%, 42%. That was not a big surprise there. But in these 6 critical House seats, there's always about 6. The Republicans won back exactly 5 since 2020 seats. So Democrats were really going all in and pouring money in races they didn't even think were competitive. Some of those Republicans are holding strong. In the San Joaquin Valley, you have John Duarte running against Adam Bray, an assemblyman. He's up by a few percentage points. In the race where I was last night, it was heavily contested. It's Katie Porter's seat. She left because she lost the Senate primary. And those 2 candidates, Scott Baugh, running against State Senator Dave Min, they're neck and neck with Scott Baugh slightly ahead. Republicans, I talked to California GOP chairwoman Jessica
Susan, I'm
Milan.
sorry, I gotta jump in here. We're running out of time. Sorry to cut you off, but listen, you guys, we're gonna hear from you later on. Thank you so much for coming on and for weighing in. We appreciate it.